Vanity Fair has turned on them, Piers. Vanity Fair with a hit piece on her in particular, writing all about how she's a diva, which some of us have known and have been talking about, and how people can't handle working for her.
For Meghan Markle. And the bad news continues this time in Vanity Fair, where their disastrous time with Spotify is absolutely fully exposed.
Well, if we consider that Harry and Meghan are a tech startup, right? They've gone out to America, they're trying to make it in the podcast and Netflix industry. Well, it's a tech startup that's gone under, and maybe they're going to need a bailout sometime soon.
New details about Meghan Markle's diva behavior from her original Vanity Fair cover shoot. Meghan? Difficult? Say it ain't so.
Breaking news, guys. Prince Harry and Meghan Markle have been officially dropped from Spotify. This is catastrophic news for the couple, but something that I've been saying for a long time would probably happen.
The Vanity Fair article that probably sent Meghan Markle to Pottery Barn for all new plates and bowls and everything that might have smashed in Montecito after she read those pages.
Look, I want to talk to you about the royals. Vanity Fair has published a major article reflecting on the 5 years since Harry and Meghan stepped down from their senior roles in the British royal family. The article was scathing. What more can you tell us?
Of Harry and Meghan when those announcements were made. The Vanity Fair says they failed to yield consistent, successful content.
It sounds like Vanity Fair had set this up for the 5-year anniversary of Megxit, but considering everything that's happened with California, them being labeled disaster tourists, the disastrous reception of Meghan Markle's trailer, the onslaught of negative press, it is culminating in what could only be described.
Yeah, I get the impression she's probably got some political ambitions that we'll soon learn about as well. But, you know, I agree with you. It does seem to me that they want to be famous for the sake of being famous. They don't want to do any work for it. It sort of, to me, seems to corroborate the idea that she probably married him for status and for extra fame, supercharging herself all the way to the A-list.
Exiting their job or undergoing long-term therapy after working with Meghan. The person who interacted professionally with her says, I think if Meghan acknowledged her own shortcomings or personal contributions to situations, rather than staying trapped in a victim narrative, her perception might be better.
Hold your breath. Seriously, hold it, because nobody saw this coming, and especially not Meghan Markle. This didn't come from the palace, it didn't come from British tabloids, it didn't come from YouTube commentators or royal critics. It came from inside Hollywood itself, Vanity Fair, the very magazine Meghan once treated like a personal coronation, the glossy validation, the proof of arrival. The covers she quietly held up as evidence that she had made it, that she belonged, that she was untouchable, and now, that same magazine turned around and sliced deep, not gently, not diplomatically, not with soft language or careful framing. This wasn't shade. This wasn't a mild critique. This wasn't even a reassessment. This was something far colder, a reversal. For years, Vanity Fair had played its role. Admiring profiles, polished narratives, the carefully constructed image of a woman rising, surviving, glowing. Hollywood knows how to protect its own, especially when a story still sells. But when a magazine like Vanity Fair changes its tone, that's not random. That's not curiosity. That's permission being revoked, protection lifted. And when that happens, everything underneath starts to show.
Meghan Markle's first Vanity Fair cover was for the October 2017 issue, and it was highly significant because it was the first time she publicly spoke about her relationship with Prince Harry. The headline, in my opinion, innocently read, "She's just wild about Harry." Of course, a play on words referencing Meghan's relationship with Prince Harry and Judy Garland, Hollywood royalty, one of her most famous songs, "I'm Just Wild About Harry."
They didn't call her misunderstood. They didn't call her pressured. They didn't blame racism, misogyny, or media cruelty. They used words that insiders avoid until they absolutely have to say them. Diva, bully, a behind-the-scenes nightmare. And this is the part that matters. These weren't anonymous trolls. These weren't bitter strangers. These were voices from inside rooms she controlled. People who worked with her, people who left shaken, people who allegedly needed therapy just to steady themselves again. Older viewers felt the shift instantly. When a magazine like Vanity Fair flips, it's not because of gossip, it's because the safety net has been removed. Publications like that do not print accusations unless someone powerful quietly says, go ahead. And if Vanity Fair is willing to go first, it means the silence is breaking, the wall is cracking. And once that crack appears, it never stops spreading.
It is culminating in what could only be described as a horrifically awful year, only 17 days in. We're only 17 days into this year, guys, and it has been bad. And I put a lot of this on Megyn because really the negative press is mostly focused on her. And I think it's a reflection of the fact that you can be a lot of things in Hollywood.
Because the article hinted at something even bigger. Names they didn't print. Stories they didn't fully verify yet. Incidents sitting inside draft folders, waiting for one more confirmation, one more source brave enough to speak. This wasn't the attack. This was the warm-up. And what they didn't publish, the chapter Megyn always feared, is exactly what's starting to leak now. The detail they held back this time is the detail that changes everything next. Look closely at what happened the moment Vanity Fair cracked that door open. Something long buried finally spilled out. And it wasn't rumor, it was burnout. Real burnout. Not the glamorous Hollywood kind. Not long hours and creative pressure. This was the kind that makes grown adults walk out of rooms trembling. A producer on Megyn's podcast allegedly lasted 3 episodes.
Sources say a colleague with ties to Archetypes, her podcast, took a leave of absence after working on 3 episodes, then left Gimlet, the podcast producer, altogether. Several others described taking extended breaks from work to escape scrutiny, meaning from her.
3. Then came the leave of absence. Then came the quiet resignation. Then, according to insiders, they left the company entirely. And that wasn't an isolated story. Others describe the same pattern: shaking hands after meetings, sleepless nights, tight chests, walking into work with dread curling in their stomachs, therapy sessions because they couldn't reset their minds after dealing with her. And these weren't interns. These weren't fragile rookies. These were seasoned professionals. People who had survived demanding talent for decades. People who thought they'd seen everything. Until this. One worker said Megyn corrected people on ideas she didn't fully understand. Another said she wanted control over everything, especially the parts she didn't grasp. A third summed it up with 2 words that landed like a punch.
What it tells us is, rather comically, that when you have this couple who, remember on their website, it says that they're all about compassion. They're compassionate people. They're also all about mental health and helping people with mental health. They've been very vocal about that recently, about the perils of online trolling and the effect it has on people's mental health.
Emotional whiplash. And suddenly that public narrative of kindness and compassion started to crack. Because if staff members are allegedly walking away traumatized, something is wrong behind the curtain. And here's what people sensed immediately. This wasn't one bad week. This wasn't a single difficult project. This was a pattern. And it didn't start in Hollywood. It didn't start at Spotify. It didn't start in Montecito. This trail goes much further back. Before producers broke. Before assistants quit. Before Hollywood whispered. An institution far more powerful tried to warn the world. And then buried the warning. That's where this story shifts. Because what happened inside Kensington Palace wasn't minor. It was seismic. Before Hollywood walked out, before Spotify rolled its eyes, before Netflix realized they'd bought a fantasy, the royal staff broke first. And these weren't overwhelmed juniors. These weren't people unfamiliar with pressure. These were professionals who had served the monarchy for decades, under queens, under kings, through global tours, diplomatic crises, and impossible schedules. And yet, she was the one who pushed them past their limits. Insiders described moments they still won't talk about publicly. A young woman crying in a hallway. A senior aide asking for immediate reassignment. Another quietly walking away from a job they once called a dream. One described the experience as unbearable. I've never witnessed anything like it. These weren't whispers. They were formal complaints. Documented. Filed. Signed. And then, silence. Not because the claims were fake. Not because nothing happened. Silence fell because the palace stepped in. NDAs were used. Files were sealed. Investigations stalled. Findings never saw daylight. Why? Because exposing a new duchess as a bully would have detonated the fairy tale they'd spent millions constructing. So, the institution did what institutions do. They protected the image. They protected the wedding. They protected the brand. and the staff were left to quietly pick up the pieces. When Meghan left the palace, the problem didn't disappear, it just changed zip codes. Because the moment they landed in Montecito, a new group of people began to notice. People with no PR team, no loyalty, no agenda. And what they said shocked even Hollywood. Montecito is built on privacy, old money discipline, an unspoken rule: don't bring chaos into our town. But according to voices quoted in Vanity Fair, that agreement ended the moment Meghan and Harry arrived. Neighbors started using a phrase no one expected: not rebels, not misunderstood, local villains. One neighbor said the couple acted like they owned the coastline. Another claimed security blocked public paths as if the land belonged to them alone. Then came the story that spread quietly for months. Meghan's team allegedly tried to redirect Tom Hanks, America's most harmless man, off a public beach, as if he were trespassing. Police were called. Neighbors shook their heads. And the message was clear: this isn't the palace. You don't make the rules here. Hollywood noticed too, because behind closed doors, executives were whispering the same thing: something is off. And they were right. Because in one meeting, one moment still talked about in industry circles, Harry revealed an idea so disconnected from reality that veteran producers sat frozen. Spotify expected a pitch, a plan, something worthy of a multi-million-dollar deal. Instead, Harry started talking about interviewing world leaders about their childhood trauma. Then he named them: Putin, Donald Trump, Mark Zuckerberg. And then he diagnosed them as damaged children turned sociopaths, while presenting himself as the one who turned out normal. The room went silent. No one laughed. No one challenged him. They just stared, realizing something uncomfortable. Harry had no idea how unhinged it sounded. One producer later said it felt like watching someone pitch a show from inside a world only they could see, and Meghan nodded along like it was genius. That's when Spotify understood. They hadn't bought creators. They'd bought chaos. Weeks later, an executive publicly labeled them effing grifters. Hollywood doesn't use language like that unless it feels embarrassed for ever saying yes. Netflix saw something even worse. They handed Meghan and Harry one of the biggest deals ever given to first-time producers. Total freedom. A blank check. And what did they get? No scripts. No treatments. No outlines. Just words. Empowerment. Impact. Narrative. And when Meghan finally pitched her lifestyle show, the illusion cracked completely. The show couldn't be filmed in her own home, not because she didn't want to, because she couldn't. Insiders say the kitchen wasn't camera ready. Wrong angles, wrong light, wrong message. So Netflix rented a mansion, a borrowed kitchen, a borrowed lifestyle, designer gowns, perfect marble, cooking in a house that wasn't hers while thousands lost homes to wildfires. Even loyal fans felt the disconnect. This wasn't authenticity, this was image worship. And then there's the silence around the children, the absence, the isolation, the perfectly timed appearances. No grandparents, no cousins, no messy human moments slipping through. Just polished images released on schedule, controlled, curated. Older women don't see privacy in that. They see strategy. Every branch of the family tree erased. Meghan's father gone, her siblings gone, Harry's brother cut off, his cousins gone, his grandmother barely allowed access. This isn't how families drift. This is how families are removed. And when someone isolates children that tightly, it's not about protection. It's about control of a narrative. That pressure squeezes everything. The marriage, the money, the staff, the image, and eventually, someone inside cracks. Not from revenge, from exhaustion. And that's where Piers Morgan comes back into this story. He said it first. People mocked him, called him bitter, obsessed, but he wasn't guessing. He was reading a pattern, and it cost him his job. Now, Vanity Fair echoes him. Hollywood confirms it, neighbors repeat it, executives say worse, staff stories match exactly what he warned about. Piers wasn't wrong, he was early, and now, something bigger is forming. A leak, a voice from inside the bubble, not a tabloid, not a critic, a real insider. With receipts, emails, timelines, even details involving the children. Meghan knows what that means. Containment mode has begun, because once one insider speaks, others follow. Everything before this was smoke. This is the first real flame. Someone inside Meghan and Harry's world has started talking. And when they finish, the image won't just crack. It will collapse. And here's the part that makes people uneasy in a way gossip usually doesn't. this isn't loud anymore. It's quiet, too quiet. The kind of quiet that happens right before something breaks wide open. Because when insiders stop shouting and start calmly organizing timelines, emails, and memories, that's not drama. That's preparation. People around Meghan and Harry aren't scrambling now, they're distancing. Carefully, slowly. Advisors stepping back. Old allies suddenly unavailable. Former supporters choosing silence instead of defense. That shift alone tells you everything. Loyalty doesn't evaporate overnight unless the cost of staying becomes higher than the cost of leaving. And Meghan feels it. You can tell by the tightening grip on the narrative, the controlled appearances, the polished statements that say a lot without saying anything real, the smile that never quite reaches the eyes anymore. Because once control starts slipping, it never comes back the same way. You can spin headlines, but you can't erase lived experiences. You can curate photos, but you can't unlive what people endured behind closed doors. What's coming next won't look like a scandal explosion. It won't be screaming headlines or tabloid chaos. It will be calm, credible, damning. One source will step forward and suddenly others will feel safe enough to nod quietly and say, yes, that happened to me too. And that's when the story changes forever. Because the most dangerous moment for someone who built everything on image isn't public hatred, it's credibility loss. The second people stop arguing and start agreeing, the game is over. No PR firm can fix that. No interview can soften it. No carefully staged project can distract from it. This isn't about revenge anymore. It's about truth leaking through exhaustion. And the saddest part? Meghan fought so hard to control the story that she never noticed the ending was already writing itself. The silence you're hearing now isn't protection. It's the pause before impact.